Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally at Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network. I'm always pleased to welcome back to the microphone Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals of Australia. Welcome back.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for having me again.
Now, recently we were talking about a tax checklist. Now, I love checklists because it's that nice regimented way of looking down the ticking boxes and crossing T's and dotting I's. And so for all of us that are out there that love doing this kind of stuff, this next checklist is going to be the winner because this pretty well affects every person in the country because we have one of the best superannuation schemes in the world, but we still need to maintain it. So we're going to talk today, ladies and gents, about a checklist. And Natasha is IFPA's superannuation specialist. And Natasha, this is really your bread and butter, isn't it?
It is. It's all about training and educating professionals such as, financial advisors, accountants, to be able to keep them up to speed with the rapidly changing superannuation environment so that they can give, professional and good quality advice to their clients. So keeping them up to date and on their toes.
Absolutely. Now, in consideration that the super scheme that we operate under is 30 years old now, and it's quite a journey given that the sum of funds, ladies and gents, that we're talking about now is over 3 trillion, and it is forecast to grow to over 5 trillion by the end of 2026, which are staggering numbers considering the population of this country. And we, I think, are the envy of many developed worlds when we look at this superannuation scheme and how well, and we've had that crossover point now where the number of people retiring now are more than people going on to the age pension. And so, ladies and gents, I know my wife and I will be reliant on our self-managed super fund. You should be too, because I saw how my mum was trying to live on an age pension. It's a safety net. It's not the world. So, Natasha, this checklist is really interesting. So, look, there's 6 tips, and there's some little extras that we want to include as well that will be relevant to some specific use cases. But let's kick into these tips. So, the first one is use the carry forward concessional contribution rules. What does that mean?
Yeah, look, if you want to make up for some lost time and make some extra contributions to your super, and that may be because, you haven't worked as much as you'd like in the past. Maybe, you spent time out of the workforce to look after kids or look after your parents, or you might have gone overseas and, didn't contribute to your super, whatever the reason might be, then you might have some unused concessional contributions that you can use. And use these carry forward or catch up concessional contributions. And so what you can do is you can make a larger concessional contribution this financial year without exceeding your cap. Now, when I say exceeding your cap, there is a cap or a limit on how much of concessional contributions you can make or receive in your fund. But if I take a step back, concessional contributions are effectively include things like the employer super guarantee contributions you receive from your employer, or any other personal deductible contributions that you make into super that you claim a tax deduction for. So they're your 2 main types of concessional contributions. So if you've got unused concessional contributions since the 2018-19 financial year, you can carry forward these unused concessional contributions for up to 5 years, and then use them to make a large concessional contribution that exceeds the cap. At the moment, the concessional cap is $27,500 this financial year. It is going up to $30,000 from 1 July next year, but you could make a larger concessional contribution, more than $27,500 if you've got an unused concessional contribution. So it's certainly a strategy that you could consider if you've got unused concessional contributions.
Now, one of the things I might point out to the listening audience as well, something like $30 to $40 billion was withdrawn during COVID because the previous government allowed people to take out $10,000 2 years running out of their super. I've already had my rant on Dollars and Making Sense about that a number of years ago. That I didn't particularly think that was a good use of our super scheme. this is a great way of being able to try and catch up some of those I guess withdrawals that occurred in many young people's super balances, isn't it?
It is certainly a great way to catch up. Now, I should mention, to be able to use this carry forward concessional contribution rule, you do need to have a total super balance of less than $500,000 at the prior 30 June. So in other words, on 30 June 2023, if your super balance was less than $500,000, then you will be eligible to use or utilize this strategy. So that's an important eligibility criteria to be aware of. And I should also mention that I did mention that you can carry forward up to 5 financial years worth of concessional contribution. Now, that first financial year being the 2018-19 financial year, that is up for expiry on the 30th of June 2024. So this financial year. So if you don't use it by 30 June 2024, then you lose it. So it's just worthwhile. Yeah, use it or lose it. So just be aware that first financial year is set to expire this financial year, because this financial year is the 5th year.
Now, Natasha, the practicality of making that happen, do you go to your employer and say, look, I want a salary sacrifice and put extra money out of my before tax pay, or do you actually write a check yourself and send the money off?
Good question. Yeah, to salary sacrifice, it needs to be the ATO calls it an effective salary sacrifice arrangement, which means that you need to enter into an arrangement or an agreement with your employer to forego future earnings. So you need to enter this arrangement before you've earned that income. So have a chat to your employer and ask if you can salary sacrifice and work out what that is for you. Once your employer agrees, then you can enter into that arrangement, and therefore your employer can, withhold or deduct those amounts from your salary, and you can have those contributed to your super fund. So it all relates to future income that you have not yet earned. So that's how you salary sacrifice. That's your main type of concessional contribution, along with your super guarantee and along with personal deductible contributions as well.
Brilliant. And the super guarantee now is at 10.5 or is it 11?
At the moment, it is at 11%, and it is going up to 11.5% on 1 July of this year. So, right. and that'll be until it gets to 12%.
To 12. Well. Okay. All right. The next tip is to make a personal deductible contribution. Now, that sort of leads on from what we were just talking, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So a personal deductible contribution, you can make these, and this is, again, you can use them as part of your carry forward concessional contribution rule. So here's where you can make a personal contribution into super and claim a tax deduction for it. And you might want to do that if you have higher levels of taxable income because, say, you've sold an investment property and you've got assessable capital gains. So this is where you might want to consider making a personal deductible contribution to offset the amount of tax that you're going to pay this financial year. But if you're not eligible to use the carry forward rules to make a larger contribution, you can still boost your super by making a personal deductible contribution to your super up to your concessional cap amount, which is $27,500. I should also mention you can actually check if you're eligible for the carry forward or the catch-up concessional contribution rules in MyGov. So if you go in there and have a look at your super, it can tell you what your concessional cap is and whether you're eligible for any carry forward or catch-up concessional contribution limits. So have a look into your MyGov and see whether you're eligible for that. But to make a personal deductible contribution, there's a whole range of conditions that you do need to meet. So there's about eight or so. So it's just worthwhile.
I'm looking at.
I mean, I can go through them, but
no, we won't do that today.
There's quite a few there. So just again, have a chat to your financial advisor or your accountant to see if you're eligible to make a personal deductible contribution.
And again, I just reiterate, this is a great opportunity for those that have been out of the workforce for a little while, working mums, for example, people that did take money out during COVID or were simply unemployed and they were on job keeper for quite a protracted amount of time. And notwithstanding, ladies and gents, this is a great saving scheme and probably the most tax effective saving scheme for your retirement. So keep that in mind. I will keep banging on about the benefits of our super scheme because it's brilliant. If you can get yourself set up and get to your cap before you retire, you will retire very, very comfortably. Okay, let's get moving on. Tip 3, spouse contribution splitting. This one's of great interest to me, I've got to say.
Yeah, this strategy allows you to split up to 85% of your prior year concessional contributions before 30 June this year to your spouse's super fund. So, for example, you can split up to 85% of your 2022-2023 year concessional contributions before 30 June 2024, as long as your spouse is under preservation age. So at the moment, preservation age is 60 for those who are born on 1 July 1964 or later. So for anyone born on 1 July 1964 or later, your preservation age is 60. So your spouse needs to be less or under preservation age, or they need to be aged between their preservation age and 65 years of age, and they cannot be retired at the time that you're wanting to split this contribution to your spouse. So that's what you can do. You split up to 85% of your prior year contributions to your spouse. And there's a number of reasons why this is an effective strategy. Mainly that you can help build your spouse's super account. You can help equalize your balances between the two of you, which means, more money split across evenly to be invested in the tax-free or tax concessional superannuation environment, or invested in the tax-free retirement phase. And it also just allows you, not only to benefit from that, but there's also a range of, good estate planning outcomes as well as a result of having, a level playing field in terms of how much you each have in super. And again, that's another show in itself, I think, Ray.
Is it ever? And one of the things I think the listeners should be aware of is that whilst we talk about couples and you double the transfer balance cap, so it's going to be at 2 million shortly. So let's just round it out and say there's 4 million available. And it tends to be mainly the guys. Once the man reaches 2 million, you can't put any more in. You then start paying extra tax. So it starts behooving the men of many relationships to start equalizing so that both balances are roughly the same, so you can take full account of the transfer balance cap. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. And this transfer balance cap, as you say, Ray, is a limit on how much you can have in the tax-free retirement phase. So as you say, at the moment, it's 1.9. You can allow to have up to 1.9 in pension phase. And for a lot of couples where, when you're thinking about, well, how do I want to leave this to my spouse? And many might, and a good strategy to maximize the amount that you keep within super and the pension phase is to, receive your spouse's super, say, as a death benefit pension. And if you were already in pension phase at the same time, you can roll back your existing pension and keep that in accumulation phase. And that way you've got more money working for you in a tax concessional environment rather than, having to take it out as a lump sum death benefit. So there's a whole range of strategies that can be looked at in order to maximize the amount that you can keep within super and retirement phase. Wonderful. And spouse contribution splitting to equalise is one of those strategies to start thinking about to help you get there much sooner.
Okay. We're about halfway through the show, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for a break. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense. I'm Ray Treverson, and I'm here at the microphone with Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals Australia. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson. I'm really pleased to have at the microphone this week Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals Australia. This week we are talking checklists and superannuation, and this is a subject near and dear to my heart. And before we went to the break, Natasha, we were talking about some tips that people need to be doing at least once a year and checking just before the tax year is finished. And so we got through 3, we've got another 3 to go. So the next one is superannuation spouse tax offset. What's that all about?
Yeah, this has been around for a long time now. And so if your spouse is not working or if they earn a low income, then you might want to think about making an after-tax contribution into their super account. Now, these after-tax contributions are also known as non-concessional contributions. And the benefit of this strategy is that it can benefit you both. Firstly, by boosting your spouse's super account, by making that contribution into their account. And then you can also get or qualify for a tax offset of up to $540. So double benefit there for your spouse and for yourself. And you can get that full offset of $540 if you contribute $3,000 into your spouse's account and your spouse earns $37,000 or less per annum. And when we're looking at income, you know, it does include assessable income, any say reportable fringe benefits that your spouse might receive, and you know, any salary sacrifice contributions that they might make, they all get added back on. So $37,000 or less, you get the full tax offset of $540 if you make a contribution of $3,000 into your fund. If a lower tax offset will be available to you if you contribute less than $3,000 into your spouse's account and your spouse earns somewhere between $37,000 and $40,000 per annum. If your spouse earns more than $40,000 per annum, you don't get the tax offset of up to $540. So quite specific numbers there in order to be eligible for this.
Now, I guess to get some context here, ladies and gentlemen, if the spouse is earning, you know, let's say $35,000 or $37,000, and you contribute $3,000 into super, considering that the superannuation guarantee is at 11.5% or 11% going up very shortly, you are effectively doubling the amount of superannuation that's going into your spouse's account, and you're getting a tax write-off for that contribution. So look, it's a double-edged, not sword, but actually a double-edged bonus that you are getting in this instance. And we were talking before we went to the break, Natasha, about being able to equalise spouse amounts of money in super so that you take full advantage of the cap that's available to a couple. And that becomes very, very important the closer you get to your retirement age. So this is the kind of thing that certainly if you're in your late 40s and your 50s, these are the kind of things, ladies and gents, you want to be looking at, because now's the time to start that planning, because as the years shorten, you get less and less time to try and make up to get up to that cap. And that's what we always want to try and get to. Okay, let's keep moving on. Tip 5, maximize non-concessional contributions. What's that all about?
Yeah, so we talked about concessional contributions, your pre-tax, your employer contributions. Now we're talking about non-concessional contributions, which are your personal after-tax contributions into super. And that's certainly another way to boost your superannuation savings, by making a contribution into super using your after-tax income or your savings. Now, again, there's always caps involved when we talk about super. The annual cap for non-concessional contributions this financial year is $110,000. And it does depend on your total super balance. For example, if you've got more than $1.9 million in super, you can't make any more non-concessional contributions into super. Again, there's also other ways you can maximize your non-concessional contributions. You can use the bring forward rules, which allows you to contribute up to $330,000 this financial year, depending on your total super balance. So, for example, if you've got less than $1.68 million in super as at 30 June 2023, you can use this bring forward rule and bring forward 2 future years worth of non-concessional contributions and make them into this financial year. So there's a whole range of ways you can go about this. I should also note that the non-concessional contribution cap is going up from 1 July next year. So it's going up from $110,000 this year to $120,000 next financial year, which also means that the bring forward arrangement from 1 July next year goes up from $330 to $360. So again, there's some strategies that you should, or things that you should think about. If you're thinking about maximizing your non-concessional contributions, you might not want to trigger, you might not want to use the bring forward rules this financial year and save them for next financial year to benefit from the larger non-concessional cap. So a whole range of things to consider. But the key point here is that if you've maxed out your concessional contribution cap, you've always got your non-concessional cap to look at as well to make some after-tax contributions into your fund. Again, have a look at MyGov to see what your your non-concessional cap is. Have you triggered the bring forward rule in previous years? If so, what have you got left? It's quite a handy tool to have a look at. And you can always also ask your financial advisor to check this information for you as well.
And I think it's worthy to note, Natasha, we have Justin Bott from Services Australia, or Centrelink as people might know them, comes onto the show regularly as well. And we talk about age pensions and we talk about indexation. And it's important, ladies and gentlemen, to remember and keep reviewing, because every year things change, okay? Even if the legislation, although that's not necessarily true, the legislation has been changing quite a lot, but things move as inflation takes hold and costs go up. The amount of money that you earn pension phase, certainly at the bottom end of the scale, if you are on the age pension, is going up. But also at the higher end of the scale, the amount of money that you're allowed to keep in super without penalty also keeps going up and scaling as we go forward. So it's really, really important to be at least once a year sitting down, if you are not in your own self-managed super fund, if you're even in an industry fund or a private commercial superannuation fund, do the review, understand where you're at, and on the journey between now and when you are retiring, sort of get a track of where you're at and what you may need to do. Just like any journey, you may need to do a bit of adjusting along the way. Now, the next one is quite interesting as well, that a lot of people may not be aware of. Receive the government co-contribution. Wow, what's that? So the government's actually contributing to our super as well. Is that right?
Yeah, it's free money from the government. And mainly, it doesn't happen often, but so this is more so for those people who are low or middle income earners, earning less than $58,445 this financial year. So you need to be earning less than that, and at least 10% is from of the income that you earn is from your job or from your business. So if you meet those two eligibility criteria, then you might want to consider making a non-concessional contribution to super before 1 July, because if you do, the government may make a co-contribution of up to $500 into your super fund. Now, the maximum co-contribution is available to you if you contribute $1,000 into your fund and you earn $43,445 per annum or less. So you need to be earning less than that and make a non-concessional contribution of $1,000. And if you do that, you get the full $500 into your account from the government. You might get a lower amount if you contribute less than $1,000. And if you earn, somewhere between that $43,000 mark and that $58,000 mark. So it does taper off depending on your income. But, it is money for jam. I mean, if you put money into your super and you earn income below those thresholds, then the government will tip in and help you. And it's all
tip in a little bit extra.
Yeah, tip in a little bit extra. It used to be a lot more generous. It used to be for every dollar you made, the ATO will put in $1, so it's $1 for $1. But now it's for every $1.50 you make, the ATO will put in $1. But hey, look, it's still a concessional benefit for people, for low to middle income people who are looking to put more money into super.
So where do they derive the number 43445? I mean, is that just historical and indexation from a base 9?
It is. So when it was first introduced, they set it at a particular limit, and each year, every financial year, the lower threshold and the cutoff threshold does get indexed. So this is why we are at these limits today, and we already have, what those new figures will be from 1 July.
Cool. Now, we've gone through the 6 tips, but I might also add there are some additional ways of topping up your super as you move along. I wanted to cover off, for example, now is the time, if people have owned their home for more than 10 years and over a certain age, can you tell people, Natasha, about the downsizer contribution? What's that all about?
Yeah, look, the downsizer contribution, initially when this was introduced, it was available to people who were aged 65 or over. But since then, it was then reduced to 60, and now it's reduced to 55 from 1 Jan this year. So yeah, if you as with everything, there's a whole range of eligibility criteria, but one of those things is, you've owned your house for 10 or more years. And if so, and you are 55, and you sell your property, then you can put the proceeds of your property into super. Now, there's a cap on that, and that's up to $300,000 per person. So for a couple, you're potentially looking at up to $600,000 that can go into super. That doesn't count towards your concessional contribution cap or your non-concessional contribution cap. So they don't count towards those caps. It just counts towards its own. It's a cap of up to $300,000 per person. And once it goes into your fund, it forms part of the tax-free component of your benefit, which is great as well. So really quite a great way for those people looking to downsize and potentially use the surplus proceeds and put it into their super. But I should say, although it's called downsizing, the downsizing scheme, you technically don't need to purchase another property. So you need to sell your property, but the law doesn't say that you need to buy another property of the same value or of a cheaper value. In fact, you can go and become a rental. You can go travel the world for all the government cares. You just need to sell a property and use those proceeds and put them into super. So that one thinking about.
Yeah, that one floored me a little bit when I read the downsizer contribution, and the people were saying, well, do I actually have to downsize? And it's like, no, you don't have to do anything. Once you've actually sold your property, and I think it's there as an incentive for, I guess, empty nesters to get out of their property, sell it so that then people with families can move in. Because again, you read these stats and whether they're true or not, but there's a lot of empty bedrooms at the moment floating around Australia. And I'm not just talking about Airbnb, because I could rant on about Airbnb and the impacts of that on our rental market, et cetera, but the ability for somebody to consider retirement now and be able to offload their property and get 600K if they're a couple into super, I think is a massive step up, and certainly one that I will be taking care of as well. Now, we're just about out of time, Natasha. Look, we've covered off. There's other things that we could have gone. There's a first home super saver scheme. There's a Division 293 thing. There's a Listo, which is around low income super tax offsets. There's a lot of other stuff, but we've covered off the basics today. Natasha Panagis from the Institute of Financial Professionals Australia, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thanks, Ray. Looking forward to our next chat.